What are the prospects? We heard the higher education minister on Wednesday say that campuses will be reopening in September.
Well, I think France is in a better position because the fees are basically zero. You have to pay your health insurance, which is a few €100, and that's it. So there's less of a financial risk in the sense that the state already picks it all up, and that's going to continue. I think, however, like universities everywhere, they are very challenged by what's going on, and we've been talking in this program about the problems and the immediate aftermath and the challenges and the difficulties. There's also an opportunity here to redefine and recreate and reinvent. And for example, in France, where they have far less of the smaller seminars and far more of the big lectures, there's definitely a thought that you could have about reinventing. So have more online for the big lectures and spend more time in the smaller groups. I think the biggest experiment, I suspect, is going to be in the US, because already we've seen for the last few years a lot of people, as you were saying, Francois, wondering what they're spending $50,000 on really. And if this is the moment of reckoning, then you could think of universities trying to reinvent themselves with perhaps smarter online, perhaps less services, but also coming up with different financial models. I mean, for example, American universities depend an enormous amount of their revenue comes from sports franchises, also comes from accommodation and food. Why not spin those off? And that will protect you, protect the core research and the research funding. So I think what we're going to see is, I suspect, in the next year or two, is a real sense of how can we reorient, how can we reinvent ourselves for an age post-COVID, but also a technological post-Zoom age where you can do a much more online than you have been doing. So in some ways, I suspect what we're seeing now is just going to accelerate the changes people have been thinking about for a while.
And one final question, Peter, because we're almost out of time. When you look at that future, already we're talking about the inequality, that gap that's been growing, and that the digital transformation set to accelerate that inequality. What needs to be done so that higher education doesn't become even more the privileged ground of the elite?
Well, actually, you can go either way. You can say that, okay, poorer people don't have the internet connections, and that's a problem. And broadband solves that. And I think what we'll see from this crisis is everybody's going to get broadband as soon as possible. But actually, in some ways, this might democratize the most elitist higher education and the most expensive higher education, because if you can imagine a world in which more and more lectures are online and are accessible to a much broader audience by the best professors, then you'll have the opportunity as somebody who can't spend £9,000 or $50,000 to actually educate yourself for a much more modest amount of money. And so I suspect that it could actually be an important plus for equality as well. But clearly there are some minuses that we'll have to think through and work through.